who your parents are or are not, it doesn't it doesn't determine anything about your
Mm.
life unless you allow it to, unless you choose for it to. So for example, I have a father who had um a, an absent father. He grew up in foster home, so like, pretty much no loving parental role for the longest part, for the beginning part of his childhood. Um, that was my dad, and he grew up to be an incredible teacher of love, self love, forgiveness. He didn't have it modeled for him in the beginning, but he learned it. And I, on the other hand, had incredible parents and still do, even though one is in the spiritual and one is still here. And I fought myself every step of the way. So I guess in other words, it's not your parents doing and it's not your parents undoing. It's up to you. And
Yes.
I think that's the biggest freedom that comes from growing up in a spiritual household. Everything is up to you. That's also the biggest downfall of growing up in a spiritual household, because there's nothing that sucks more than knowing that all this shit is your doing. And there's nothing that's better than knowing that all this shit can be undone by you. Sometimes I think it's nice to know that it's somebody else's fault. It's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault. But there's no freedom in that. There's no power. And ultimately, even though it's annoying to have to take responsibility for everything that shows up in your life, it doesn't mean you're at fault. It doesn't mean you're to blame. It means you take responsibility to release yourself from the ties that connect you to it, right?
Yes.
So if something happened to you and you take responsibility, you let it go. You're no longer connected to the thing that you despise in the first place. You're free and you're empowered. So that's the beauty of growing up in a spiritual household. So having parents like I did and I do doesn't mean I'm free from wanting to just not take responsibility, to not be good. I I've had many experiences in my life. When I say be good, what I mean is that I've had many experiences in my life where I've wanted to be not not responsible, not attached, just to be doing something bad just because who cares?
Yeah.
Um, Ultimately, I think that we all are faced with this decision, and the decision is whether or not we become closer to God or further away. And we all know, all of us, we all know whether we're doing something that brings us closer or further away. It doesn't matter how it, like, it's defined by society or not. I know I've had really difficult times in my life, all in a really short period of time. My husband was indicted. I gave birth. I had 30 pounds to lose. Superficially, I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it was to me. My dad died. My stepson passed away from an unexpected accidental overdose. My husband was sentenced to 7 years in prison. I had another baby in that time frame. My husband's conviction was overturned. I found out I was pregnant for a third time. Really complicated pregnancy. All these different things. Really intense. Oh, I had no finances. All of our assets were frozen because of my husband's legal stuff. Every single aspect of my life that I liked before, I thought I was skinny, pretty, young, wealthy, smart. I thought I was all of these great things, right? And I probably was. All of a sudden, I was chubby, no money, no confidence. I felt abandoned. My husband was going to prison. I mean, everything reversed itself.
Yeah.
Everything that I identified as being of value to myself was gone. And I had to face the decision of whether or not I could take responsibility for that or not. And I felt so much shame that you can't even imagine, because I felt as though if we get in life what we are, not what we want, then I must be bad, because all this bad was happening. And therefore I felt shame, enormous shame. I'm not like the strongest or most resilient person, but I am intelligent, and I was able to understand that maybe all these things that I thought were bad were just labeled bad or viewed as bad because they were not the outcome or the result or what I thought should have happened or ought to have happened. But maybe they were still good, and maybe there was still beauty to them and love to them and incredible healing and teaching to them. And maybe if I let go of the way that I was attached to viewing them like bad, maybe I could see the beauty. Maybe I could get the meaning, and maybe I wouldn't have to be so responsible for them. And it was in the process of writing our book that I discovered that email that my dad sent to his friend in Australia, Dr. Maitri Guntalek, about the poem from Hafiz in a treehouse. And it was about how Rumi wrote, Hafiz was writing about Rumi's poem, and how Rumi wrote how before each of us at our birth is a ladder that is placed, and we climb the rungs of the ladder, and we climb them. Nobody climbs them for us, and God doesn't climb them for us, doesn't make us climb them, doesn't take away the rungs. It's just there. And maybe all of the things that I thought were happening to me because I was bad were actually rungs on the ladder that I chose before I even incarnated, so that I could climb my way toward God, toward enlightenment, toward love. That my dad dying, that Mason dying, that financial stress, that body image issues, that all of those things were not bad. They were just rungs toward love, rungs that I could choose to climb, or I could choose not to. And no matter what I chose, it would be okay. But if I chose the rungs of love, if I chose forgiveness, acceptance, beauty, if I chose to see the unfolding of God in each of those rungs, in each of those difficulties, if I chose that, I could become closer to everything I was seeking.